So I'd like to thank MISA for having us on this talk. As Garrett said, I've got John Zifrin, Jonathan Lee, and Derick Stace-Naughton. This is going to be a great talk because we have a head of production, the head of production technology, and the head of a studio complex. So we're kind of covering, all the bases in Productions Go Virtual, a new evolution of content creation. So I wanted to start really, I wanted to give a general statement first that virtual production is using a game engine or similar technology to develop virtual environments and assets, and then they are used in a live action shooting situation. So the applications can go from green screen and previs right through to the big sexy LED walls that we're all seeing being built all over the world at the moment. But I wanted to start with you, John, and kind of a question. When did you first hear about virtual production as a concept? When did that start to come into you at ABC Signature?
Well, we have the, and thanks so much for having me and letting me be part of this group. We have the unfair advantage at the Walt Disney Company of having ILM as a part of our enterprise. So Mandalorian was obviously a game changer in so many ways. And I think if you say that visual effects really started in its mature form with Star Wars, 40 years later, we're now just moving into the virtual space. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this technology, and I think you described it very well, in this particular application, it is having environments projected on LED panels and a camera shooting them live and you get live in-camera final content with the actors performing in front of these virtual sets. Now, the advantage and amazement of that is extraordinary, because you can have someone in one moment on a street corner in Hong Kong and at the next moment in the middle of a Mandalorian set. So we've been looking at this deeply, and we as an enterprise, senior management is very excited about really broadening our education and adoption of this technology across a significant portion of our slate.
Great. Jonathan, for you, being the head of media engineering and innovation at Amazon Studios, where did you first start to become aware of this technology in Amazon's world?
Well, I'm fairly new to Amazon. I'm about to turn 1 year. However, obviously, VP's been around for quite a while now. Where our team factors into the picture is for the iteration and development of emerging and new technology. So I think right now, to some degree, we've baselined what it is to do virtual production. And, filmmakers are generally can be superstitious people. So you can't really have a science experiment on set. And so what my team does in the programs that I run, what we do is we start looking at what the next generation and the next version of that is going to be in support of the production folks. So, one of the big things right now is display technology. So anyone that's been on a live active VP set, there's a established framework for success. And what we're looking at is, and it's great, what we have, the technology that we have now is great. But if you're looking at it from sort of a perspective of the technology, video, in the video realm, we're kind of in a gamma world still, and there's much more that we can probably do in camera with respect to color space and even video transfer functions that we're exploring with content production. So our eye is to the future in how my department interacts with VP at Amazon.
And Derick, for you, you have to be responsive to clients. You've got at Quixote, you've got multiple sites. It all looks beautiful from your website. How have you been expected to kind of meet these demands?
Yeah, well, first let me go back a little further and just speak a little about, you know, my first encounter with virtual production, which is actually 5 years ago. In 2016, Kenneth Branagh was making this film, you know, Murder on the Orient Express. And if you've seen that film, you know, most of it takes place on a train, inside a train. And production needed a way to simulate the lighting effects of you know, the passing lights outside the train windows. And so they asked our company to help, and we essentially wrapped that train in LED panels. We called it enhanced environments back then, but it was, you know, one of the largest virtual production applications at the time. But here's the thing, that use case was just out of focus background shots, right? I think the very, very powerful thing that John alluded to that's happened in the 5 years since is that, you know, with the help of these game engines, the set of creative use cases has just exploded because we can now do photorealistic in focus imagery, not just these sort of blurry background shots. To more directly answer your question, at Quixote Studios, you know, we're here to support all of Jonathan's productions at Amazon, John's productions at Disney, and, you know, make sure that the soundstage infrastructure, the equipment, the services that their productions are consuming are able to support this new technology, whether that means different power requirements on sound stages, higher sound stages to accommodate the LED lid, or even different grip and lighting packages.
And so are you actively kind of just converting all your stages? Are you relying on demand? How do you make those decisions about the technology as it is now, and knowing that filmmakers always want the best, they want the new thing, you know, we'll be off the current panel technology mid next year at the latest, and people will be like, well, that's the old panels, I want the new panels. How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think flexibility is the key, right? We aim to be infrastructure that can support any creative decision, any production's preference. I think you're spot on. The Row has done a fantastic job of cornering the LED market for this use case over the last few years. I think partly because a lot of the folks who own those Row LED panels haven't been able to put them out on concert tours for the last year and a half, and have been scrambling to find other ways to use those panels. They have zero opportunity cost. But I think you're spot on that the Moore's Law will continue to apply to the panel technology as it has for the last 10 years. And, you know, it's hard to see a scenario where that's not a commodity.
You know, there's an interesting discussion in terms of facilities, because you really have to think about balancing what you want for your show, what fits, what application fits. Some shows just need a car rig, other need some giant thing. And some shows just need it for a week or a month. Others need it for the run of show. And from a facility standpoint, as well as an economic standpoint, if you have a centralized facility, you have to pay for the company to move there and go in, as opposed to if you have it on your own stage, but then you're paying the overhead cost of having it parked there, even when you're not using it. So it really becomes an interesting conversation and a granular conversation with our storytellers and what they envision, and our production folks, cinematographers, production designers, and directors, to think through how to take advantage of it. And I think we're at this place where there are a lot of these stages out there, but folks don't know how to use them yet. And it's an interesting time.
I mean,
Yeah, sorry, John said something very interesting that I always try to emphasize with technology, and I think it's really important as many of us are technologists here, some of us even scientists. My first hire at Amazon Studios in the Innovation Lab was a color scientist. And, but all of this stuff doesn't really matter if you're not helping tell better stories. That's what this technology really is about. It's like, how can we help in our realm in studio technology at Amazon? We're looking at it like, how can we help the storytellers, the the show makers, the TV makers, tell better stories and make that process easier for them. And it is, when you're looking at VP, it's a new thing, and you can do it on a grand scale, but I also think there are probably applications for smaller deployments for facilitating the storytelling too. And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting work coming up on that over the next few months.
And I think from an opportunity standpoint, there are three kind of buckets, at least, that folks who are looking to get into this, because it is an emerging space, and we're all looking for really good people. You've got the folks who understand the hardware component. You've got the folks who understand the software component, because the software integration is really quite something. And you've got the artists who generate the assets. And all three of those buckets are skills that are going to be in demand, whether it's for virtual production or even emerging visual effects technologies.
I mean, sorry, Derick, you go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious, Johnny, is there one of those three buckets that is the greatest bottleneck in your observation?
Well, I think that Jonathan touched on it. First of all, there aren't enough panels to go around. Second of all, we're going to be looking back in 5 years saying, oh yeah, that was a really nice stage back then, but
yeah.
It's like, I'm very pleased. I'm always impressed to see an 8K camera. I'm hard pressed to see a television that's going to really show the enhancement from that. I think that I think the panel availability, and Jonathan, I defer to you to comment on this, probably is a solvable problem. Having folks who know how to install those and rig that is probably solvable. There are companies that do that, and once it's in, it's in. I think that from a systems integration standpoint, it's really tough to find people who know how to have all this stuff work together in real time without latency. I think there are great artists all over the world, and so I think understanding and being able to implement this technology on behalf of the productions, because when you walk on stage, it's got to work or your day is shot. And by work, it means all those pieces have to fit together.
It's a long walk home if your LED isn't syncing to playback. It's that a terrible experience.
Bad feeling.
Jonathan, I wanted to talk to you a second about the display technology, because a lot of this only 2 years ago were jumbotrons, right? Like they were at sports events, needing to see something on a screen during the day. And so what is the process that's happening now and into the future about this panel technology?
Well, I think what we've seen with respect to the micro LED platform in general, or LED emissive display technology, is that it did evolve from the signage world. And as that started to refine, the technology is able to create better pictures and higher fidelity. So, I think the things that we're looking at now with panels is that if you have, not to get too much in the weeds on it, but the pixel pitch of the panel makes a big difference with how what depth of field you can use with the camera, and how far, where you can place the subjects in front of the camera. So I think what we're starting to see now are finer pixel pitches where you wouldn't have thought you would use that before in production, and now you're starting to see these things come into play. Higher resolution, and then the thing that I'm obsessed with right now, and that's color fidelity and how the panels perform with respect to luminance. So how bright and dark you can make a panel. And I think before it was thought like, well, the first time I had suggested that we use different types of transfer functions other than gamma, I was sort of, at first, I was kind of scoffed at, saying, well, we don't need that. And then now you're really starting to see transfer functions that are used in HDR, like perceptual quantizer or log investigated, because the cameras are so sensitive, and you can pick up and resolve that detail. And as we start to look, want more photorealistic and sharper imagery that's displaying on the panels, we'll want also commensurate color fidelity to go along with that. So I think what we're seeing now, like with The Mandalorian, absolutely beautiful work. And I think down the road, you're going to see that imagery look even better in camera. And then, of course, all the benefits of walking off with camera raw files that have the whole shot composed. And that's really sort of the efficiency you get with virtual production. You have your composed shot ready to go.
And think about it from the storyteller standpoint, to be able to be on set and look through the camera or look on a monitor and see your final in real time is just an extraordinary advantage. And I think that teaching people more about this and being involved earlier in the development process, so that showrunners are writing to the technology as opposed to the technology trying to adapt to this pre-written thing, is going to enhance the efficiency and value of this technology. It's really a symbiotic relationship.
So John, you've got quite a slate under you. So what initiatives are you doing kind of across that slate to make sure that you're getting your return on investment in, shooting in this way, but also that no one's just going crazy either? And how do you kind of bring creatives into this that may not have kind of experienced it before?
Well, I think it really is introduction, experimentation, and adoption. And so we're starting with the people who already are excited about it.
Yeah.
And that's the low-hanging fruit. But those people talk to their friends, their co-workers, their other showrunners. And so what we're trying to do, I think, is look at our production executives and post executives and our development executives and introduce them to the technology as they then get material that may have applications that may be applicable to these sorts of technologies. So that's where you want to get early in the process, because the asset creation, if you want to go and scan someplace, it's going to be a location, and use that because it's going to be too expensive or you can't get back to that location, that's kind of easy. But if you want to really integrate this technology on an ongoing basis and a frequent basis, then that's where it starts to make financial sense, because the cost of the installation is then mitigated by the savings you have in either rebuilding a set, going to a set. And so it really requires talking to all of those folks, creative, logistic, and financial components of it, to look on a very granular basis to the show and say, here's your show, here's what we're pitching, here's where it can work, here's where it can't. Noonday sun, not so good. You can now have a golden hour shot all day long. And go ahead.
Yeah, just I think you're spot on from the vendor side, trying to sell these services into a production. what we always end up coming back to is here's the cost of a green screen shoot, here's the cost of post-production, or the cost of going on location, and 9 times out of 10, the LED panel rental and the virtual production solution is cheaper if well implemented.
Well,
And
Derick,
the other
what
thing,
sorry, John, you go.
so the other thing that I think folks are finding is simply in terms of production efficiency, you can get more setups on an LED stage because you don't have to, if you want to flip the set, you push a button and go to and turn the image around instead of the whole set around. And so even factoring that in really, I think, is freeing for folks, but it is an education process.
Derick, I wanted to ask you, so when people come into Quixote and start to talk to you about this, what are their concerns? Because I don't think it's just like the brand of panel. I think people have a lot of different concerns, right?
Yeah. I'll answer that in terms of a few different components. I think on the panel side, I agree with the earlier comment. There are constraints. Sometimes it's hard to source the LED. You need one big batch of color matched LED. But those are generally solvable problems. There's the talent consideration of, do we have the right experts setting up the hardware? So far, the best solution to that has been bringing in talent that really knows LED from using LED on concert tours for the last 15 years and transitioning them into a TV application. But really, like, the biggest challenge that I've observed is what John alluded to earlier, around somebody who can truly integrate all of these different pieces with a traditional production workflow, who can make this seamless for VFX, for the camera department, for the art department. And that's I think the real winners over the next few years are the people and businesses that really get great at integrating these different components.
Jonathan, I wanted to ask you, I mean, we've got 10 minutes left. This is a very quick panel. So I wanted to get onto, where is this going, what it could be? What do you see in the space that you're kind of projecting out 2 years, say, in this space?
Well, I mean, I can talk about what we're looking at with technology, but as far as like what Amazon's going to do,
sure, I understand.
Yeah. So there's again, what works, what's known to work on a live set, on a hot set, and there's new versions of the gaming engine coming out. There's always advancements in things like GPU and of course display technology. So we're looking at all of those things and figuring out like how we can iterate with versions, get more fidelity in the color engine, and get better, the ultimate aim, again, not to sound like a broken record, but is to help tell better stories. And with the technology, that's either making more fantastic images or more accurate images, or images with higher fidelity in the camera. So that's really what the sort of the ethos of what we're doing in the innovation lab is. What can we do with these technologies to help? We know what we can do now, and we know we can always do better. And then there's whatever else we're going to stumble across that we didn't know, and then usually some fun stuff in the middle.
I saw a question in the chat about a scene or something that was particularly challenging, and it sure would have been good to have that. And one of the shows that I've just been involved with takes place in 1963 Harlem, and going on location in New York and trying to create 1963 Harlem and get all those vintage cars and change all the set dressing and realize that the crosswalks look different now, different than they did then. And next season, if we're fortunate enough to have another season of that show, the idea that we could go to 5 locations in a day on a VP stage, and we can build those assets and own those assets and reuse those assets is just a resource. Shooting in New York City is not easy. That would be so valuable to the show, and the showrunner is just dying to get to it. So it's that sort of thing is just a bullseye for us.
Now, you've broached a very interesting subject, which is the data. And here we are at a conference that talks about data, but there is a mass of data on the set. I mean, the environments are enormous. Every little device, the lenses, the cameras, all tweeting out little minute by minute kind of adjustments. Like, I'd like to hear from all of you, actually. What is the value in that data, and what are you doing to kind of future-proof it, keep it in storage? I mean, I know a lot of people are thinking like you are, John, in keeping then a library of, oh, we need to go to 1960s Harlem again. Oh yeah, we've got that in there. But are there other uses or use cases for this data?
Well, yeah, absolutely. From the perspective of production, there's a massive amount of value in things like lens data, any kind of data that, you know, there's many types of real-time data, just the distance that the subject is from the lens, you know, telemetry data. All of those things are actually, most of those things at least, are actually usable in the post process. So when you want, especially, you know, where just in general, one of the things that you can do very precisely with virtual production that's a little more difficult to do in a practical world is to reproduce shots. So if you shoot something and you need to reshoot it, for whatever reason, having all of that data, that not just the data, but that data captured with a temporal reference like time code, will let you go back. You can, you know, especially if you're looking at camera automation systems, you know, all you have to do is you just need one mark, and you can go back and reproduce shots to a very, very accurate degree, you know. And it can even be when you want to have, say, things that would normally be dangerous in camera that you can't quite get correct in the digital realm. You could possibly do some really interesting things if you have all that telemetry data and the lens data, et cetera. So there's massive value in that in general.
Yeah, I just imagine the fun it would be for a director to be able to say in editing, damn, I wish I had that over the shoulder. Yeah. And to be able to walk onto a stage and load that scene and get that shot is just something that would never have been possible in television before. Maybe in movies, but not in TV.
So in our last couple of minutes, I just wanted to talk about talent, actually, because that is the piece that a lot of people are struggling to find and place, both within companies and production. So where do you all see the talent coming from? And also, as a sort of sub question, what are the existing skills that lend themselves best into a foray into virtual production?
Well, that's kind of why I talked about those buckets, because, and I know there's some students on this watching this, hopefully, but there really are such extraordinary opportunities, regardless of your interest, whether it is in science, physical stuff, artistic stuff, structural stuff. This is a field that is going to grow significantly. And so I think whether it's gamers who know how to work with the Unreal Engine really well, whether it's artists who just need to understand how to build these environments, whether it's architects who need to understand these ceilings weigh a lot. And I think, you know, much to Derick's consternation, if you've got a 50-ton ceiling, that's and it cannot move a quarter of an inch, that's a pain. So I think there are enormous opportunities for folks to hone their skills and learn new skills in any of these areas, because the demand is extraordinary.
Derick, Jonathan, any last words on anything? I think we're at time now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
look,
I just, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Derick.
Oh, you know, I think the last thing I would say is, you know, I think one thing the whole industry is going to have to grapple with over the next 10 years is just what are the ripple effects, right, on the entire physical production ecosystem, right, which is it's a $30 billion industry in California, 20 billion of that, you know, below the line spent on set or post-production. You look through those line items, grip and lighting, transportation, location services, and of course, post. A lot of them will be affected in different ways by, you know, increasing adoption of this technology. And I think that's something every vendor, every production house is going to have to grapple with over the coming years.
Jonathan, last word from you on this.
Yeah, I think I'll echo John again. I mean, one of the thing, you know, the two first people that I hired on my team were, one is a physicist and the other is a mechanical engineer. So science is back big, and there's a lot of, you know, we're looking at in non-traditional industries like architecture, you're doing 3D scans of rooms, and that's something that was really in the realm of the architecture industry and the construction industry. And so you're seeing a convergence of the sciences again, and I think it's a really, really interesting time to be in content creation. And I do believe we're in a content renaissance right now, and I think we're all really fortunate to be doing what we're doing now, because it's maybe one of the best times, I think, in probably many decades. So it's very exciting